At a family gathering, Mom bragged, "Your sister finally got the perfect house. When will you achieve something like this?" I just smiled. I already did. You would have seen it if you had come to my birthday party. Everyone stared at her, and she blushed. I'm Vanessa, I'm 30 years old, and I just bought a house. Not just any house, but a beautiful 3-bedroom place with an outdoor terrace and an incredible garden full of flowers. The real estate agent couldn't stop talking about the mature landscaping and established flower beds, but all I could see was my morning coffee corner and my weekend gardening sessions. Standing in that empty living room with the keys in my hand, I felt like I was going to burst. This was mine. The house had character, built in the 1940s with original hardwood floors that creaked in all the right places, built-in bookshelves that begged to be filled, and windows that let in the most beautiful afternoon light. The kitchen was small but perfectly functional, with vintage tile that had somehow survived decades of previous owners. The master bedroom had a walk-in closet that was bigger than my entire previous apartment. But it was the backyard that had really sold me. Not huge, but private, with an old oak tree that provided perfect shade and flower beds that previous owners had clearly loved and tended. I could already picture myself out there on Saturday mornings with my coffee, planning which vegetables to plant and where to put the herb garden I'd always dreamed of having. The mortgage process had been terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. I'd never imagined I'd be able to afford something like this, especially not at 30. When the startup got acquired and my stock options suddenly had real value, it felt like winning the lottery. I'd spent weeks with financial advisors, making sure I wasn't making a huge mistake, that I could actually afford the monthly payments even if my income dropped. After years of terrible landlords and thin walls where I could hear every fight my neighbors had, I finally had my own space. No more dealing with broken appliances that took weeks to fix, no more surprise rent increases, no more having to ask permission to hang pictures or paint walls. This was mine, every creaky floorboard, every slightly uneven door frame, every perfectly imperfect detail. The mortgage paperwork was still warm in my purse, and I wanted to call someone, anyone, to share this moment. My first instinct was to call my parents, to hear the pride in their voices when I told them their failure daughter had just bought her first house. But something held me back. Maybe it was years of having my achievements minimized, or maybe it was the way they always found a way to make my successes about Claire somehow. But I didn't. I had a crazy idea brewing. What if I surprised everyone? My birthday was coming up in a few weeks, and I could kill 2 birds with one stone, a surprise birthday party and a housewarming. My parents would be amazed when they walked in and realized their daughter owned real property. My sister Claire would probably die of shock. You see, my family has a habit of thinking I'm the black sheep. I'm the younger daughter who never lived up to Claire's standards. She's 35, has a fancy marketing job, and always seems to have her life together. Meanwhile, I've been jumping between rental apartments and entry-level jobs for the past decade. The pattern had been established early. Claire was the straight-A student who never caused problems, while I was the one who struggled with math and got detention for talking back to teachers. Claire went to the state university on a partial scholarship, while I went to community college for 2 years before transferring to a smaller school that my parents constantly reminded me wasn't as prestigious as Claire's alma mater. When Claire graduated, she immediately landed a job at a marketing firm with a clear career path. When I graduated, I took a job at a coffee shop while I figured out what I actually wanted to do with my life. Claire moved into a nice apartment in the city center, while I lived in a series of increasingly run-down rentals on the outskirts of town. At family gatherings, the questions were always the same, "So Vanessa, what are you doing now?" Followed by barely concealed disappointment when my answer didn't measure up to Claire's latest promotion or achievement. I learned to give vague answers and change the subject quickly. What hurt most wasn't the direct comparisons, it was the way my parents' voices changed when they talked about us. When they mentioned Claire, there was this tone of pride and satisfaction. When they talked about me, it was concern tinged with embarrassment, like I was a problem they were still trying to solve. At least that's what they think. What they don't know is that I've been working incredibly hard at a tech startup for the past 4 years. We got acquired 18 months ago, and suddenly my stock options were worth real money. Enough money to pay the down payment on this house and still have savings. The startup had been a risk. When I left my stable but boring administrative job to join a company with only 12 employees, my parents had been horrified. "You're throwing away job security for what? Some pipe dream?" My mother had said. Claire had just shaken her head and muttered something about me never learning to think ahead. But I believed in what we were building, a platform that helped small businesses manage their inventory more efficiently. It wasn't glamorous, but it was useful, and I loved the fast-paced environment where everyone wore multiple hats and every day brought new challenges. I started in customer support, but over 4 years gradually moved into project coordination, then account management, and eventually business development. When bigger companies started showing interest in acquiring us, I could barely contain my excitement. As one of the first 20 employees, I'd been granted a small but meaningful equity stake. When the deal closed 18 months ago and I saw the number in my bank account, I literally had to sit down. It was enough to change my life completely. I'd spent over a year carefully planning the house purchase, working with financial advisors, and saving additional money for closing costs and furnishing. The irony wasn't lost on me that while my family thought I was floundering in yet another dead-end job, I was actually building something meaningful and profitable. But I never told them about the career growth or the unexpected windfall. Why would I? They rarely asked about my life in any meaningful way, and when they did, it was usually to express concern or disappointment rather than genuine interest. My parents, David and Linda, have always been obsessed with Claire. She was the star student, the one who got into the good university, the one who got the corporate job right after graduating. I was background noise, the one who needed to find herself. Even now, at 30, they still talk to me like I'm a lost teenager who might someday figure things out. The plan was perfect. I would text everyone about my birthday party, get them excited, and then surprise them by revealing we'd be celebrating at my new house. I could already imagine my mother's face when she realized her failure daughter had bought a place before Claire. I spent the next month preparing the house. I bought furniture, hung pictures, and planted flowers that would bloom in time for spring. Everything had to be perfect for the big reveal. Those 4 weeks were like a whirlwind of decorating and organizing. I'd never had the opportunity to decorate a space that was truly mine before. Every rental had come with restrictions: no painting, no holes in walls, no changes that couldn't be easily undone. Now I could do whatever I wanted. I spent an entire Saturday at furniture stores, finally able to buy pieces I actually loved instead of whatever was cheapest or most practical. A comfortable sectional sofa in deep blue fabric that felt like a hug. A dining table made of reclaimed wood that could seat 8 people. Bookshelves that would finally give my book collection a proper home instead of keeping them in boxes. The hardware store became my second home as I learned how to install new light fixtures, replace old outlet covers, and fix the wobbly banister on the front steps. YouTube became my best friend as I figured out how to hang pictures properly, how to arrange furniture to make rooms feel larger, and how to plant annuals that would bloom just in time for the party. Every evening after work, I'd come home and tackle another project. Painting the guest bedroom a soft yellow that made the morning light even more beautiful. Installing new cabinet hardware in the kitchen that made the whole space feel more modern. Arranging and rearranging the living room until the flow felt just right. The garden was where I spent most of my weekend time. The previous owners had clearly loved it, but it needed attention after sitting empty for several months. I weeded the flower beds, pruned the overgrown bushes, and planted bulbs that would bloom in early spring, plus some quick-growing annuals for immediate color. I even started a small herb garden near the kitchen window where I could grow basil, rosemary, and thyme for cooking. I made a guest list: my parents, Claire, and my closest friends, Sarah, Mika, and Jenny. Sarah and I have been inseparable since college. Mika is the guy I met at work who became like a brother to me, and Jenny has been my neighbor-turned-friend for years. The text went out on a Tuesday afternoon: "Hi everyone, I'm having a birthday party next Saturday at 7 p.m. Can't wait to see you all there. This year is going to be special." I attached my new address without explanation, assuming they'd just think I was renting a new place or something. Then I waited and waited. Usually, my friends respond within hours, but my family, well, they're not exactly quick with their responses. Sarah responded within minutes: "OMG, yes. New address? Did you move? Can't wait." Mika sent a thumbs up emoji and wouldn't miss it. Jenny called me immediately, demanding details about the special part. But for my parents and Claire? Complete silence. All week, nothing. Friday night, my phone finally buzzed. A text from my mother: "Vanessa, we won't be able to come to your birthday. Claire got a promotion at work, and we're throwing her a celebration party the same night. Sorry, honey, maybe next year." I stared at that message for a full 5 minutes. Maybe next year for my birthday. I typed and deleted about 10 different responses. Finally, I replied: "Mom, Claire's party could be any other day. We're talking about my birthday." Her response came 20 minutes later: "Her promotion is a big deal, Vanessa. This party is important for her career. Do you understand? Important for her career. Not we're sorry we'll miss your birthday or let's reschedule. Just that Claire's party was more important than mine." Again, I looked around my new living room at the decorations I'd already started putting up, at the menu I'd planned, at the cake I'd ordered. Everything suddenly seemed stupid. Here I was, 30 years old, still hoping my family would show up for me. Worst of all, Claire didn't even text me. No happy birthday, no sorry I'll miss it, not even an "I heard you're having a party." Complete silence from my older sister. I sat on my new couch, the first couch I'd ever bought myself, and thought about all the birthdays they'd missed or forgotten. Last year, they remembered a week late. The year before, it was 3 weeks. The year before that, they sent me a card a month after the fact, with a note about how busy they'd been. The pattern of forgotten birthdays went back years. When I turned 25, they completely forgot until Claire mentioned it during a phone call 2 weeks later. The embarrassment in my mother's voice when she called to apologize was almost worse than being forgotten in the first place. Oh honey, we've just been so swamped with Claire's job search, she'd said, as if that somehow made it better. My 26th birthday fell on a weekend when Claire was moving apartments. Guess where my parents were? Helping her pack boxes and clean her old place, while I spent the day alone with a store-bought cupcake and a rented movie. They sent a text that evening, "Happy birthday. Sorry we couldn't call earlier, busy day." The worst was probably my 28th birthday. I'd actually made reservations at a nice restaurant, hoping we could finally have a proper birthday dinner together as a family. I'd even bought a new dress for the occasion. When I called to confirm the time, my mother said, "Oh sweetie, didn't we tell you? Claire got tickets to that concert she wanted to see. We're going with her tonight. Can we do your dinner next weekend instead?" Next weekend never happened. They got busy with other things, and by the time anyone remembered, it was March and my birthday was in February. When they did remember on time, it was always just a text or phone call. No gifts, no effort, just happy birthday, honey. And that was it. Meanwhile, Claire's birthdays were full productions with family dinners and thoughtful gifts. Jewelry, expensive handbags, weekend trips to wine country. Her birthday was marked on their calendar in red ink, with planning that started weeks in advance. She got surprise parties, carefully chosen presents, and social media posts about what a wonderful daughter she was. The contrast was so stark that I'd stopped hoping for anything different. I'd learned to make my own birthday plans, usually with friends who actually remembered and cared. But deep down, I still wished my family would show up for me the way they showed up for Claire. You know what? Screw them. I picked up my phone and called Sarah. "Hey, change of plans for Saturday," I said when she answered. "It'll just be us friends. And I have something huge to tell you all." "Everything okay?" she asked, noticing something in my voice. "More than okay. Just wait until you see where we're celebrating." If my family couldn't find time for my birthday, they certainly didn't deserve to know about my house. This was going to be the best birthday party ever, with people who actually cared about me. Saturday came, and I had the best birthday party I'd ever had. Sarah, Mika, and Jenny showed up and were completely blown away when they saw the house. Their reactions were priceless. We spent the night on the terrace, eating takeout and drinking wine. They couldn't stop asking about the house, how I'd afforded it, when I'd bought it. I told them about the startup acquisition and the stock options. It felt so good to share this with people who actually cared. The party was perfect. Everything I'd wanted, just without the family drama. After everyone left, I sat alone surrounded by empty wine bottles and birthday gifts. My phone had been silent all day. No calls from my parents, no texts from Claire, nothing. Not even a happy birthday message. Months passed. My friends knew about the house, but I never told any family members. I specifically asked my friends to keep it off social media for now. I wanted to control how and when my family found out. My family's silence continued. My mother would send me occasional texts, short ones about the weather or asking if I was eating enough vegetables. Nothing meaningful. Claire never contacted me at all. I focused on making the house perfect. I painted rooms, installed new fixtures, and spent weekends in the garden. My neighbors were friendly, and I had regular barbecues with my friends. Life was good. Then, in early October, my phone rang. My mother's name appeared. "Vanessa, how are you, honey? Your father and I are having a family dinner next weekend. All the relatives will be there. It's been so long since we've seen you." Something in her tone made me suspicious. My mother never called for casual family dinners. There was always an agenda. "When is it?" I asked. "Next Saturday at 6. You can come, right?" "I'll be there," I said. Finally, Saturday arrived, and I baked a homemade apple pie, something I'd learned to make in my new kitchen with fresh herbs from my garden. I knocked on my parents' door, hearing voices and laughter inside. The dining room table was extended, set for about 12 people. My mother opened the door. "Vanessa, you made it." The living room was full of relatives I hadn't seen in years: Aunt Carol, Uncle Jim, my cousins Mark and Lisa. They all rushed to ask me the usual questions: "Are you dating anyone? When are you getting married? What are you doing for work?" I smiled and gave vague answers. This was exactly why I avoided family gatherings. Everyone always wanted to know why I wasn't married, why I wasn't more successful, why I wasn't more like Claire. Speaking of Claire, I saw her across the room practically glowing with happiness. There was a guy beside her, tall, in an expensive suit, with his arm around her waist. She kept showing her left hand to the other women. "Let me take that pie," my mother said, whisking it away to the kitchen before I could protest. My father led me toward the dining room. I saw my assigned seat, the last chair, squeezed into the corner, as far from my parents and Claire as possible. I was literally the last choice, even in the table arrangement. But honestly, I almost felt relieved. I could sit quietly and avoid most of the family interrogation from this spot. "Dinner is served," my mother announced. I settled into my corner seat. Everyone was chatting and laughing, passing dishes around. The food was good. My mother had prepared her usual feast of roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and vegetables. I ate in silence, listening to conversations about work, kids, and vacation plans. Then my mother stood up and tapped her wine glass with a knife. Everyone, we have wonderful news to share tonight. The table fell silent. All eyes turned to her. She was beaming, practically vibrating with excitement. Our Claire has bought herself a beautiful little house. We're so proud of her. Everyone burst into applause. I clapped too, genuinely surprised. Claire had bought a house. When? How had I not heard about this? But that's not all, my mother continued, her voice getting higher with excitement. Claire is also planning to announce her engagement very soon. More applause, even louder this time. Claire was blushing and raising her left hand, showing off a diamond ring that sparkled in the light. Her boyfriend, no, fiancé, was smiling and accepting congratulations. My father stood up, raising his wine glass. We have so much to celebrate tonight. So many reasons to be happy. And it's all thanks to our eldest daughter. Our eldest daughter. The way he said it, with so much pride and emphasis, twisted my stomach. I'd heard that tone before, the one that implied Claire was the real daughter, the one who mattered. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. Even the relatives seemed to sense the tension. All eyes were on me now, waiting to see how I'd react to being so obviously excluded from the praise. My mother turned to me with that mocking smile I knew too well. Claire bought herself the perfect house, Vanessa. When do you think you'll be able to achieve something like that? Or do you plan to keep wandering through rental apartments forever? The table went even quieter. Everyone was staring at me now, waiting for my reaction. I could feel their eyes boring into me, expecting me to be embarrassed, to blush, to cry, to run away like I used to when I was younger. I was used to being compared to Claire. It had been happening my whole life. But my parents used to try to be subtle about it, at least in front of other people. This was different. This was deliberately cruel, designed to humiliate me in front of the entire extended family. But I wasn't embarrassed. I didn't blush. I certainly didn't cry. Instead, very deliberately, I set my fork down on the table. I took a slow sip of water. Clearing my throat, I looked my mother directly in the eyes. Actually, Mom, I already have achieved that. I bought myself a house. The silence that followed my words was deafening. Every person at that table looked at me like I just announced I was an alien. My mother's mocking smile froze on her face. My father's wine glass stopped halfway to his mouth. Even Claire's fiancé looked confused. What? My mother finally managed to say. I said I bought myself a house, I repeated calmly. I've had it for almost a year now. Everyone gasped, literally gasped. Like a chorus of shocked relatives, all inhaling air at the same time. My mother's face went through about 5 different emotions in 2 seconds: surprise, confusion, anger, and then a strange, suspicious look. You bought yourself a house, she said slowly, like she was testing the words. Really? Then why didn't you tell us? I smiled at her, the same sweet smile she'd given me moments before. Well, Mom, you would have seen it if you had come to my birthday party. After all, I celebrated my last birthday in my new home. More gasps. Aunt Carol dropped her fork. Uncle Jim's mouth actually fell open. Your birthday party, Aunt Carol said, turning to my mother. Linda, why didn't you go to Vanessa's birthday party? My mother's face was turning red now. She was opening and closing her mouth like a fish, clearly trying to think of an explanation that wouldn't make her look bad. We had a scheduling conflict, she said weakly. A scheduling conflict, I said, my voice still perfectly calm. Is that what we're calling it? Because I remember the exact words you used, Mom. You said Claire's promotion party was more important than my birthday. All the relatives turned to look at my mother with questioning expressions. I could see the gears turning in their heads, trying to figure out what kind of parents would skip their daughter's birthday for a work party. That's not. You're exaggerating, my mother said desperately. Am I? Because you didn't just miss my birthday, you've missed several others. In fact, you haven't come to any of my celebrations in 6 years. You usually forget my birthday completely and congratulate me a week or month later. The silence was becoming uncomfortable now. All the relatives were looking back and forth between my parents and me, like they were watching a tennis match. Uncle Jim cleared his throat. 6 years? You haven't been to Vanessa's birthday in 6 years? Aunt Carol was looking at my mother with an expression I'd never seen before. Like she was seeing her sister in a completely different light. Linda, she said slowly, you told everyone you had the perfect family, that you loved both daughters equally. You said Vanessa didn't come to family events because she hadn't achieved anything in life. Oh, that was interesting. So my mother had been talking about me to the relatives, painting me as the failure daughter who was too embarrassed to show up to family gatherings. I never said that, my mother protested, but her voice was shaking. Yes, you did, Aunt Carol said firmly. You said Vanessa was a failure, that she couldn't get her life together. But if she's a failure, how did she buy a house? And why didn't you go to her birthday parties? Uncle Jim nodded. Now, Linda, this doesn't sound like equal treatment to me. Sounds like favoritism. Favoritism, my father sputtered. That's ridiculous. We treat our two daughters equally. I almost burst out laughing. Really, Dad? When was the last time you forgot Claire's birthday? When was the last time you skipped one of her celebrations for someone else's party? He opened his mouth to answer, then closed it again, because we all knew the answer. Never. They had never forgotten Claire's birthday or missed one of her events. This is getting out of hand, my mother said, her voice getting shriller. Vanessa, you're making us look bad in front of everyone. I'm not making you look bad, Mom. I'm just telling the truth. The truth about how you've treated me for years. Claire, who had been sitting in stunned silence this whole time, finally spoke. Vanessa, you're ruining everything. This was supposed to be a celebration. A celebration of what? Your house? Your engagement? Because it's always about you, isn't it, Claire? Everything is always about you. That's not fair, she said, but her voice was weak. Isn't it? Tell me, Claire, when was the last time you called me? When was the last time you sent me a message that wasn't about you? She stared at me, clearly trying to think of an answer. The silence stretched on. I could read all your late birthday messages in our family group chat, I said conversationally. The one that includes most of the people sitting at this table. Then everyone could see exactly how this family treats me. Vanessa, stop, my mother hissed through gritted teeth. Stop what? Stop telling the truth? Stop defending myself? Or stop embarrassing you in front of everyone? My cousin Mark, who had been silent this whole time, suddenly spoke up. Wait, so you really bought a house? Like, really bought it? 3 bedrooms, outdoor terrace, beautiful garden, I said. I've been living there for almost a year. That's amazing, he said. Congratulations. Thanks, Mark. It's nice to have someone in the family congratulate me for once. That hit deep. I could see it on everyone's faces, the realization that they'd been told a completely different story about me, and now they were seeing the truth. I think we should all calm down, my father said, but his voice sounded defeated. No, Dad. I think we should be honest for once. I think everyone here should know exactly what kind of family you pretend to have versus what kind of family you actually have. My mother stood up abruptly, her chair scraping the floor. Vanessa, you need to leave right now. I looked around the table at all the shocked faces staring at me. These people had believed for years that I was the family failure, the daughter who couldn't get her life together. Now they were seeing the real story. You know what, Mom? I think you're right. I should leave. I stood up slowly, smoothing my dress. But not because I'm embarrassed or ashamed. I'm leaving because I'm tired of pretending this family dysfunction is normal. Silence followed me to the front door. I could hear urgent whispers starting as I put on my coat, but I didn't look back. That night I came home feeling lighter than I had in years. The confrontation had been brutal, but necessary. For the first time in my life, I had stood up to my family instead of just accepting things silently. My phone started ringing around 10 p.m. My mother's name kept appearing on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. Then my father called, then Claire. I ignored them all. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and a bunch of text messages. I made coffee and sat on my terrace, reading them while birds sang in my garden. From my mom, Vanessa, you embarrassed us in front of everyone. How could you do that? From my dad, your behavior last night was unacceptable. Call us immediately. From Claire, you ruined my announcement. Everyone was talking about you instead of my engagement. I deleted them all without responding. If they wanted to apologize for years of treating me like garbage, they could start with that, instead of blaming me for their embarrassment. The messages kept coming all week, long paragraphs about how I'd ruined their reputation and how all the relatives were asking uncomfortable questions. Apparently, Aunt Carol had called my mother the next day, demanding to know why she'd lied about me being a failure. Now everyone thinks we're a dysfunctional family, said one message. You need to fix this. Fix what? The truth? I wasn't going to apologize for defending myself or for achieving something they said I never could. A week later, I was working in my garden when I heard car doors slamming in my driveway. I looked up and saw my parents and Claire walking toward my front door. Obviously, someone had given them my address, probably one of the relatives who had been asking questions. I wiped my hands on my jeans and waited for them at the door. They stood there, uncomfortable, looking at the beautiful front porch and garden. Nice place, Claire said, and I could hear the envy in her voice. It's bigger than mine. What do you want? I asked, not inviting them in. We need to talk, my mother said. Can we come in? Reluctantly, I stepped aside and let them into my living room. They looked around like they were touring a museum, taking in the hardwood floors, the moldings, the furniture I'd chosen so carefully. Vanessa, my mother began, we have a problem. Since last weekend, All our relatives have been calling us. They're asking questions about why we didn't know about your house, why we missed your birthdays. And now they think we're terrible parents, my father exploded. They think we don't love you. Well, do you? The question hung in the air. None of them answered immediately. Of course we do, my mother finally said, but it sounded forced. You're our daughter. Funny way of showing it. Claire stepped forward. Look, we need to fix this situation. I have my housewarming next month, and my engagement party, and my wedding after that. Half the family says they don't want to come because of all this drama. So you need to throw another housewarming party, my mother said. We'll help you plan it. We'll invite all the relatives. Then we can tell everyone that we helped you, that we've reconciled, that you forgave us. I stared at her. You want me to lie? We want you to help us save face, my father said. A party to show everyone we're a normal family. I started laughing. I couldn't help it. They were asking me to participate in their deception, to help them maintain their image of the perfect family. No. I'm not going to lie for you. I'm not going to pretend we have a good relationship. I'm not going to help you convince everyone you're wonderful parents. Claire's face turned red. Fine, then we won't invite you to my wedding. Fine, I said. I wouldn't go anyway. They all looked at me like I'd slapped them. You don't mean that, my mother said weakly. I mean it completely. I'm done pretending. I'm done making excuses for how you treat me. I'm done being the family disappointment when I'm actually doing better than any of you thought possible. This is ridiculous, my father said. You're our daughter. You can't just cut us off. I walked to the front door and opened it. I think you should leave now. They left, but not quietly. Claire was crying. My mother was saying this wasn't over. And my father was muttering about ungrateful children. I closed the door behind them and leaned against it, feeling exhausted but free. 2 weeks later, Sarah called me with gossip. I heard through my cousin that Claire's housewarming was a total disaster. Really? Yeah. Apparently, most of the relatives boycotted it. They're all Team Vanessa now. I felt a little bad about that, but not much. Actions have consequences, and my family was finally facing theirs. Over the next few months, something wonderful happened. My relatives started calling me directly. Aunt Carol invited me to her daughter's graduation party. Uncle Jim asked me to bring my famous apple pie to his barbecue. My cousin Mark wanted to see my house and get decorating advice for his apartment. I went to everything. For the first time in years, I was actually enjoying family events. Without my parents and Claire there to make everything revolve around them or put me down, I could be myself. The relatives apologized for believing my parents' version of events. They said they'd always wondered why I never showed up to things, but my mother had convinced them I was embarrassed about my failures. We should have contacted you directly, Aunt Carol said. We should have known something was wrong. 10 months later, I'm closer to my extended family than ever. I host regular dinners at my house. I'm part of the group chat where everyone shares photos and makes plans. Finally, I'm treated like a valued family member instead of an afterthought. My parents and Claire? Complete silence. I heard Claire got married last month. The wedding was small. Apparently, a lot of people found excuses not to attend. I don't miss them. I thought I would, but I don't. My life now is peaceful, honest, filled with people who actually care about me and want to celebrate my successes instead of minimizing them. Sometimes I walk through my beautiful house, looking at the rooms I've decorated and the garden I've cultivated, and I feel proud, not just of what I've achieved, but of how I finally stood up for myself.